So I do not know what's going on in the ATP. I just don't have the bandwidth. So, wish them luck.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
I'm James.
Today is a very special day. Do you know what it is?
Cinco de Mayo?
It is Met Gala Day.
Oh,
Currently, all the fashions are being unveiled on the carpet. I'm told it's blue.
The carpet is blue?
Coleman Domingo was on a blue carpet at least.
Okay. This year's theme was tailoring black style. It was inspired by black dandyism. Venus Williams has just appeared in a beautiful forest green frock.
A frock?
Would you call it forest green?
Yes.
Okay, I'm getting better at colors.
I wouldn't call it a frock, though.
No.
The last time we recorded, what tournament was that? That hadn't finished yet. Stuttgart.
Stuttgart and some men's tournaments as well. Barcelona, I guess?
Yeah. So,
The extended masters give us an excuse not to record every week, which is bad, I know. But if they're going to take 2 weeks, why can't I?
Ostapenko did one of her Ostapenkos and dusted Sabalenka to win Stuttgart. This is a young woman who is either feasting or is famished. One of the two.
Yeah.
Two notable singles results on the year, reaching the final in Doha and then now winning spectacularly in Stuttgart. Of course, this pairs with a pretty great year in doubles.
6-4, 6-1 over the number one Sabalenka. And like you said, she did an Ostapenko by winning and then swiftly losing to Anastasija Sevastova in Madrid.
One thing for sure, though, is that she'll be showing up to her next nail appointment at Riga Nails in style because she sped around the court in her new Porsche.
Oh, I know she's a horrible driver. I just know it. She said she got a Porsche motorcycle, right, for winning the doubles?
Or a bicycle.
A bike?
Bicycle, I think.
Porsche makes bicycles.
I don't know. It said bike. I assumed it was a bicycle. She becomes the first woman since Serena to beat both the number one and number two at the same event on clay. We also failed to mention on the last episode that Aryna Svitolina had won in Rouen as the top seed. No sets lost. And then she parlayed that into a semifinal run in Madrid.
Yeah, just a great stretch of results from her. She wins her second title since her return from maternity leave, which was back in 2023. She won it in Strasbourg, both titles in France, both on clay. A notable stat about Aryna, and many of you probably know this, she has an incredible finals record. She's 18-4 in WTA finals, 7-0 on clay.
As it stands now, if the race to wherever the WTA finals are, where are they now?
Riyadh.
Yeah, the race to Riyadh, she'd be in that field.
Oh.
The tour ended up in Madrid, and the lights went out.
Yeah, not just at the tournament. As you know, there was a huge blackout across Portugal, Spain, parts of France. Somehow they managed to get Coco's match done before the blackout. It was actually, she was on...
Somehow? She just showed up, played the match, and...
Well, right, but it was very early in the day when the blackout happened. I'm surprised they even finished a match that early.
I'm saying they had nothing to do with it.
Well, sure. They clearly didn't know what was coming. But somehow Coco finished, and during her post-match interview on court, that's when it happened. So we have like live footage of when the lights went out. Nobody knew what was going on.
22 matches needed to be postponed. Luckily for them, they had 3 weeks to complete the tournament.
Right. It didn't really stress the schedule that much.
You have it here that Jack Draper took the opportunity to read 10 pages of a book. I missed this. What is this about?
I'm not being hyperbolic. This was in a tennis.com story about what players did during the blackout. And this little anecdote was just dropped there kind of without comment. That Jack was able to read 10 pages of a book. 10 whole pages. And he said, I'm not really a reader, so it was pretty interesting.
He's not really a reader.
Wow. The fascinating tidbits, they just never stop.
We mentioned on the last episode that Iga's path to potentially winning this title was brutal. We didn't really get into it, though.
Right.
As it turned out, she made it through a lot of those minefields, winning 4 matches, getting to the semifinals, before she was blasted off the court by one Coco Gauff. Who did she beat?
She had to play Iala again, whom she lost to in Miami? Miami, yes.
She won this time in 3 sets.
Then Noskova, who's beaten her before in a major.
2 sets there.
Ostapenko was supposed to be there. She lost. Then she beat Schneider, Madison Keys, and this wasn't supposed to happen, right? Coco wasn't supposed to be the one to drum her off court. But 6-1, 6-1, there was a lot of discourse about this match that Iga just didn't look mentally there, that her forehand was off, footwork was off. I mean, it's notable because this is supposed to be her bread and butter. She has, 4,000 points to defend from last year during the clay season.
At 1.2, Coco was also her pigeon.
Yeah, for quite a long time. But Coco has won their last 3 matchups. And we're coming from a time when it seemed like it would be impossible for Coco to beat her, especially on clay.
Lots of discourse, continued discourse about Iga's mental state. The team confirmed that she lost her grandfather shortly before the tournament. Casper Ruud sent a supportive tweet, and people were mad.
Yeah. What did Casper say?
He said, quote, "Like millions of other people, I love watching you play. Not your day to day, but you inspire so many and you'll be back stronger than ever." 2 exclamation marks.
Now, what's wrong with that?
What's wrong with a men's tennis player supporting a women's tennis player? Like, isn't this one of the things that we're always complaining about?
When she's clearly going through something. And then we find out that her grandfather passed away shortly before the tournament, and she's already not in a great headspace, clearly, right? She already told us that she was pretty shaken up by the doping violation. Things are just not right in Iga land. And she, apparently, it was reported in Polish sporting press that she's probably going to be taking a break after clay.
As she should.
Clearly, she needs it. And so I have no interest in beating up on her game or where she is mentally. We need to sort of hold the same standards across the board. I understand that some people were sort of bothered by it because, well, it was at the expense of Coco, right? Not many people were giving Coco credit for this victory. And it's like, if so-and-so was going through this, would you show the same amount of sympathy? Would you support them? And I totally get that. However, in and of itself, this is a net positive thing, right?
I think it just felt like the culmination of weeks upon weeks of not so great losses, with this one now being a calamitous one.
Right.
Coco Gauff beating you 6-1, 6-1 on your favored surface. After all this that has happened, this is supposed to be your swing. You haven't won a tournament since last year's French Open. We're heading into that final stretch now where you have to defend that title. And instead of ramping up and showing that you're getting to your peak tennis again, you're hit with this like a ton of bricks.
Right. She's still reaching quarterfinals, semifinals on the back of her immense talent, right? It's not a total disaster. This loss was pretty shocking, especially by the scoreline, but she's not getting the type of preparation and confidence that she wants going into the French Open. And I don't know, is this clay season just kind of a wash because other things are going on with her?
Also, not for nothing, Coco Gauff has been playing pretty bad herself heading into this result. This result was an excellent week for Coco, but she'd been going through it herself.
Right. I totally understand, and I feel like, can Coco get some credit here? A lot of the discourse, of course, was about Iga, but can Coco get a little credit for beating somebody who used to beat her routinely and easily? She played really well this tournament, and even when she didn't play well, she showed a lot of grit, which we saw in the final.
Aryna Sabalenka. Is anybody stopping her? Well, we just mentioned that Ostapenko stopped her. But
Listen, Aryna has been to the semifinals of any slam that she hasn't won. We don't make predictions on the show, but to me, this French Open is hers to lose. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw her holding the trophy at the end of the tournament.
What happened in that final? She beats Coco Gauff in straight sets.
Yeah, Aryna was very good for most of the final. I wouldn't say she was playing her best, but she was very aggressive on return. Even when she was missing, she was constantly going for it, pushing Coco back, taking time away from her. Coco has a knack in this matchup for dragging Aryna's game down into the dumps. So sometimes it doesn't look that great. Sometimes she forces Aryna to just play poorly and make errors. But for the most part, this final was Coco chasing, right? Early in the first set, she lost 17 straight points. And huge props to Coco for turning that around, for breaking Aryna's serve, making the first set a little bit competitive, and then, of course, bringing the second set to a tiebreak. This was all just hustle and grit, right?
Because Coco was up a break in that second set, deep into that second set.
Yeah. Unfortunately, she couldn't keep those little leads she had built for herself. Aryna was just really, really good on return. And, I mean, Coco was making a ton of errors off the ground, obviously a lot of forehand errors, whatever, but it's always cool, even when it doesn't look pretty, to watch her fight.
Dinara Safina explained in an interview with Anna Chakvetadze that Sabalenka tailors her practices to her next opponent. So ahead of this final against Coco, she had her hitting partner mimicking Coco's game. Up until this final, Coco had a 5-4 head-to-head lead against Aryna, and now they're even at 5.
With this win, Aryna joins the 11,000 points club, so that means a player in the WTA rankings who currently holds 11,000 ranking points. In the past decade, only 3 women have done that. Serena has had over 13,000 at one time, then Iga, then Aryna. Aryna does have a difficult but possible chance of extending that record over Serena's record. It would be really, really tough to do, but it's technically possible.
Dating back to Rome last year, Rome 2024, Aryna has been to 10 finals and won 6 of them.
Now imagine if she had won the Australian Open, had won Stuttgart, how much further along we'd be in this rankings conversation. I know it's not really a thing, right? It's not really a legit record. Ranking points change all the time. The value of tournaments change. But it's kind of a cool thing to hang your hat on. And it's a true measure of dominance.
By my calculations, this is just me eyeballing it and doing some quick math, Aryna has a 4,343 point lead over Iga Swiatek.
Oh.
Coco is at number 3 with 6,600 points. Pagula at number 4. Paolini still at number 5. Of course, she's got that French Open and Wimbledon finals to defend going forward. Madison Keys number 6. Andreeva number 7. Qin Wen still at number 8. Emma Navarro number 9. And Paula Badosa at number 10. Aryna is lapping the field in points. That's the bottom line.
Right, and she still has more to gain, right? She didn't play Wimbledon last year. That she could pick up 2,000 points out of nowhere. She didn't win Roland Garros. There are a lot of points on the table for her, actually.
On the men's side, Casper Ruud. Amazing. Loved this story. Loved that this happened. Unbelievably, he gets the biggest win of his career. Up until last year, he hadn't even won an ATP 500 event. Now he gets his first Masters 1000 title. Of course, this is a little bit misleading because this is a guy who's also made 3 Slam finals. So it's not like he hasn't had opportunities to even have a bigger win than a Masters 1000 or a 500 as he did last year. Mm-hmm. It's just that he's kind of not really been able to get over the final hurdle in these bigger tournaments.
Yeah, he's not had a great year so far. A disappointing stretch of results on clay, which is supposed to be where he excels. And he wasn't always, getting up for the biggest tournaments. He has, 13 titles now? Most of them are on 250s. A lot of them are in that summer clay stretch where a lot of the people aren't playing. 12 of them are on clay. 1 of them is on hard court. And as you said, this is his first win at the Masters 1000 level.
Hell, Jack Draper had a Masters 1000 title before he did.
Right, and he could have had another one this week in Madrid.
To your point, though, about him not having a good year, he addressed this. He said that he had actually sought help from presumably a mental health professional or a sports psychologist. He felt that he was like a hamster in a wheel, and that he'd been going through some tough times. And no sooner had he sought help, he's winning this tournament.
And seeing Casper play like this in the final, it's hard to understand why he doesn't win more, right? Why he hasn't been able to conjure this. And like you said, a lot of players go through lulls and get frustrated when they feel like they're practicing well, but not matching up against these top guys in the real world. Like, there's so many variables in tennis. But seeing him play in the final, seeing his return on both wings, seeing his speed and like his mental kind of trickiness, I just wonder, like, wow, how hasn't he won this tournament before? Or how come he hasn't won Roland Garros? It was really cool to watch.
We know that. We know the reason why.
Right. No, but you know, when you're in a match and you're watching, you're kind of like, wow, this guy's so good. Why, how come he doesn't do this all the time?
I really enjoyed how he messed with Draper's lefty serve, swung out to his backhand.
Yeah.
Hitting lob winners off the return, having Jack come into net thinking he can win an easy point with a really weak return from Casper, and he just made this really tall dude uncomfortable at net off that backhand return, which is not easy to do.
Right. Dealing with these high backhands. And as you said, like, some of these returns were perfectly placed lobs.
I got shades of Rafa watching him in this final. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, I can see that.
Even though he's a right-handed player and Rafa was a lefty, some of their stroke play is very reminiscent of each other, to my mind.
And it's not surprising. I mean, Casper grew up idolizing Rafa. Went to see him at Roland Garros. And despite Jack being the bigger server, having that weapon over Casper, Casper is the one who hit more aces, who won more on his first serve, and had a much bigger second serve speed.
Well, that mattered not much at all because he won very few points on those second serves. It was historically one of the worst in his career, actually.
So with this final, Jack joins the ATP top 5. Where did that come from? It feels like it just came out of nowhere. Jack has been hovering around 20 for so long.
The ATP top 10, Jannik Sinner is still at number 1 with 9,730 points. That guy, 1,700 points behind. Carlos at number 3, 1,900 points behind. Fritz at number 4 with less than half the points of Sinner, who's been inactive for 3 months. Draper at number 5. Djokovic, who has pulled out of Rome, is at number 6 with 4,130 points. Ruud re-enters the top 10. He's at number 7. Duminar 8. Musetti at number 9. We'll get to him in a bit.
His top 10 debut.
And Holger at number 10. This is a top 10 that does not have Daniil Medvedev. He's at number 11. A top 10 that does not have Rublev, who's at number 17. Tsitsipas at number 19. These guys who've been mainstays for a while in the top 10, they're not there. In this period of Sinner's absence, a lot of the guys who you may have thought, well, this is an opportunity for them to make a run, they're struggling themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Simply put, the ATP is a mess right now. You have Carlos unable to stay healthy. At this point, it's a worrying trend.
Right.
We just watched his Netflix documentary. We'll get to that toward the end of the show. We were promised Sinner and Alcaraz for years. That hasn't really been playing out. Instead, that guy's at number 2.
Right. I mean, we've got Draper as the top 5 player. I know a lot of people called this years ago, but to me, it's still surprising that it's happened so quickly. And I think part of it is the players who've jumped in the rankings have really been able to capitalize on some of the chaos at the top of the men's game. There hasn't really been those kind of openings for a while.
Is Musetti actually happening? Is this a thing that we're going to have to deal with? I was being force-fed so much Musetti content in Madrid. Like, he is the one who could actually break through and be a star for tennis. He's got the looks, he's got the charisma, he's got the this, the that.
Oh.
Wild scenes.
I don't know. I mean, he's fine, right? I don't really feel any kind of way about Lorenzo. They were circulating his kit, like his white sleeveless kit. It was fine. And I do feel like he Delilah'd himself. He was the hair. The hair was him. I don't know. But yeah, on clay, this is happening, right? Musetti is happening on clay. The runner-up to Carlos in Monte Carlo, semi-final appearance in Madrid. In both those tournaments, he beat Tsitsipas and de Minaur. And in Monte Carlo, Tsitsipas was the defending champion, which accounts partly for why he's dropped so much in the rankings. Rublev was the defending champ in Madrid, lost all those points as well. Also in Madrid, Naomi Osaka loses to Bronzetti, and she is going through it on social media, right? This is public therapy.
She went down some kind of spiral after this loss. Post after post after post before finally saying, you know what, it's fine, I'm fine. And then she goes and takes a wild card into a WTA 125 challenger, which as soon as I saw this happen, I just knew this was prime content for you. This is something that you've been preaching for years with many other players, and to see her come through and win that tournament, her first tournament since her return to tour, and also her first clay title of her career, it just had you buzzing.
You know, this is my gospel, right? I'm always encouraging top players, when they hit a bad streak, when they're coming back from maternity or injury, don't think you're better than the challengers or the ITFs. If things are tough for you on the main tour, why not get some match practice at a lower level? At a level where people are playing at your level at this moment, right? Those are your real opponents, and there's no shame in that. And I don't say this, like you said, I'm not saying this to humble her, right? I don't think Naomi...
Like I said?
You said that I was sort of relishing in the humbling of Naomi. But I said...
No. That is such a misrepresentation.
Okay.
You said it's good for her to show some humility in going down to that level. And I said, oh, you want to humble her?
And no.
You want to see her humbled?
I don't. And I keep this energy for anybody. As you know, as I've been consistent about this on this podcast, I think it shows humility. As a 4-time major champion, as a former number one, to go down to the challenger level, it must be tough, right? It must be a real hit to your ego. And I admire it when people do it. And what happened? She has to grit through some matches, and she wins this tournament in Saint-Malo.
You thought you did something there with me, didn't you?
You thought you ate, huh?
Mm-hmm.
I guess she was sort of airing out grievances on social media. She posted a job application to her haters. I've got bad news. A lot of the haters also have full-time jobs. They got time for both. And she said, after she won, quote, "Kinda ironic to win my first trophy back on the surface that I thought was my worst." Thought was your worst. Why can't you excel on clay? Right? You can.
We've seen it. We saw her play Iga at the French Open last year and was up 5-2 in that third set. She can do it.
Mm-hmm.
We've been talking for the last few months about Jannik Sinner's absence. We've talked about the case he caught, his agreement that he reached with the ITIA. We've talked about the futility of that guy to snatch the Sinner wig, or even shift it a little bit in his absence. Carlos was also unable to do it. We are in Rome. What happened in Monte Carlo happened. What happened in Barcelona happened. What happened in Madrid happened. And now we are here. We are here in Rome. Sinner is back. The first ever number one Italian at this home tournament. And it's like he never left.
Right. He gets a hero's welcome at the Rome tournament, understandably. But there has to be a level of embarrassment. You know, we have talked about this doping suspension as if it were a vacation. As, not much will have changed in the world of tennis since he left. But perhaps we've looked past the fact that this is probably quite embarrassing for him. It's something that we didn't realize, but it was hanging over his entire excellent 2024 season, and now he's back. I mean, people are going to expect that he has a point to make, right? That was an accident, that there was no performance-enhancing intent or effects, and I'll keep doing what I was doing.
He returns on clay, not on hard courts, so that's already a barrier to him striking it big in his first tournament back, right? It's not his favorite surface.
But he's good on all of them.
Okay, my point still remains.
Right.
In a way, maybe this relieves some of the tension and pressure that he might otherwise face if he were returning ahead of the US Open or the Australian Open. This was Carlos's time of year last year. He had come back from injury to win the French Open, to win Wimbledon. He has all these points to defend now, and Sinner can just kind of play himself back into form maybe. For his part, he says that his expectations are low to start this return to tour.
At least for Rome. He also said that he is not dating that woman. I don't know who that woman is, but photos went viral this week. I don't know who she is, but they're not dating. That apparently was important to clear up in the first press conference back. He'll start against either Navone or the Italian wildcard Cina, and then we'll go from there. He's still over 1,600 points ahead of his closest competitor for the number one ranking. He was a semifinalist last year in Roland Garros, losing to Carlos. Carlos has obviously 4,000 points to defend coming up very soon. He had double adductor injuries. He was skipping Madrid and will be back in Rome. So there are a lot of unknowns coming up.
We wanted to hit you with an update on Bianca Andreescu because she'd been off the tour for a while. She re-emerged in Rouen after 6 months away, beating McCartney Kessler in Madrid before losing to Rybakina. She wins a challenger in doubles randomly, paired with the Indonesian player Aldila Sugiardi, who herself is a 3-time Slam semifinalist in mixed doubles. In February, Bianca had an emergency appendectomy, which delayed her preparation for her return, and this seems to be pretty common for tennis players.
Is this just confirmation bias? I feel like we've seen a lot of appendix issues among tennis players.
Another person we have an update on, Anastasija Sevastova. We mentioned her earlier in the piece. She beat Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, whom she had previously been 0-8 against, and then Jelena Ostapenko in Madrid, before being double-bageled by Diana Schneider. This was her second attempt at a comeback on the WTA Tour. She previously suffered a major injury in Austin of last year. That was her initial return from maternity leave. And she damaged her ACL, meniscus, and cartilage. So that was a catastrophic injury that she suffered in her first return to tour.
Yeah, she was on crutches for 6 weeks, had to relearn how to walk. Funnily enough, while her daughter was learning to walk for the first time. Sevastova is only 35 years old. I thought she was like 40. It feels like she's been gone for so long.
I remember when she was a top 10 player. I was in Charleston doing press at that time. One of the things that happened in Madrid that really made me just sigh, and there seems to be at least one of these every year in Madrid.
Ah, okay.
They had this anti-domestic violence campaign that they got a bunch of players to participate in, and it was done through the Mutua Madrid Foundation, the Madrileño Foundation, and it featured players booing the concept of domestic violence. And there were many ATP players, many WTA players. Coco was in it, Grigor was in it, and it just felt, I don't know, okay. It was kind of cringe.
Yeah, so the intention, great, love to see it. This is the problem that plagues tennis as well. It's not a private issue, it's actually a very public, criminal issue.
Right, because it's not just tennis players talking about what happens outside of tennis.
Right.
The call has been coming from within this house for years now. And so this happens at a tournament that's been run by a notable, notorious sexist for decades.
Mm-hmm. He no longer owns it.
But then another one of a lesser degree is now the tournament director, who himself presided over his own fuckery in his first go out. And we're watching this as with nothing about what happened or has happened or is happening in tennis, what is being ignored in tennis, being acknowledged. It was just weird.
The conceit of the PSA was, if you hit women, we have a word for you. and the word was boo. And so a number of players were booing. There was such a notable absence, right? The number 2 player, the de facto number 1 in Sinner's absence, was not in the ad. Why do you think that is? Right? You can't put Zverev in that ad. There are a number of male players you couldn't put there because they've been accused or convicted of domestic violence.
You say, what's the word that we say when a man hits a woman? It's not boo, it's jail.
Right, but the boo is happening in real life. Certain players are getting booed for that very reason.
That was just a bit of a side note, a little bit of an observation. Last week, the Carlos Alcaraz Netflix documentary came out, and we watched it. We watched all 3 episodes. It was simultaneously interesting, never riveting, but interesting, and also full of lies. lies, more lies, and beautiful gowns.
Okay, so you might know that I am a dedicated hater of the Netflix sports documentaries. They're all their celeb documentaries. They're not actually documentaries, right? They're PR exercises. They're often quite insipid, and you might get a few tidbits that are interesting if you're a fan, but I am too negative, I've been told. So let me just say, I loved it.
Excuse me?
Well, I'm too negative on the show, so I'm going to lie.
Was there a recent accusation levied against you?
No, not me in particular. So let me lie and say, I hope it wins an Emmy. It was amazing.
Okay, to be specific about what was wrong with this documentary, or as you say where you come from, documentary.
That's true. That's how we talk.
The whole premise of it was Carlos becoming the greatest ever. The goal of beating Rafa and Djokovic and Federer. Why are we doing this?
My God.
That does not make it interesting. Why do we have to appeal to people who know nothing about tennis to sell this stuff?
They just beat it into the ground. Every episode, multiple times, it was like, we are making Carlos into the GOAT. Does he have it? Can he do it? We know he has the potential. Why isn't he achieving? What are you talking about? We've just left the Big 3 era. The expectations are out of this world. For somebody to win 20 majors is absolutely insane. It was unfathomable to win even 15 during the Pete Sampras era. Can we all slow down?
Especially given all the injuries that he's had.
Right.
This is becoming an alarming feature of his time on tour. And that necessarily stops you from winning that many majors. It just won't happen if it continues.
But why is the entire series Carlos is expected to be the GOAT? And here's why he's not going to do it. It presupposes that people think he's the greatest ever, or he will be.
You could easily just set it up as, here's this guy who came up in Spain under the great shadow of Rafa. And this was addressed by like the end of episode 2 or something. But that should have been the main frame to work from. And say, hey, right off the jump, I'm not trying to be Rafa. I'm trying to be me. Which was the title of it, wasn't it?
A mi manera.
Exactly.
My way, yeah.
My way. So do that. And then just show your life on tour, your ups and your downs, your family life. It was cool to see where he lives, how he lives.
Right. He lives in an apartment with his family.
That was interesting. These made-up goalposts that nobody's talking about. Not one person in tennis is talking about Carlos Alcaraz being the GOAT with 25 slams.
Right.
Nobody is talking about that. It's not interesting. Other than that, it was cool.
I mean, he's a charming kid. He is fairly open as far as tennis players go. I think he's expressive. I wouldn't say he's a deep thinker like Rafa or even Novak, but you don't have to be.
Well, with Novak, sometimes you don't want people thinking.
I know. I didn't mean that as necessarily just positive thing.
Just shut it off. I enjoyed him leaning into not doing what he should be doing. You know? Like, you're going through it, you're having a bad time emotionally, whatever. Yeah, I'm gonna fuck off to Ibiza for a few days. I am Carlos Alcaraz, you know?
Right. He is very much trying to live this duality, right? He wants to be a 21-year-old guy who has fun and gets drunk and parties and whatever. His coaching team is always trying to reel that back. Juan Carlos is not shy to say, I disagree with what you're doing. I think this is detrimental to your tennis and your career. You've made a bad decision here, but you know what? You're an adult and you can do whatever you want. I found the whole thing a little bit unfair to Carlos. I guess, do we expect these players, do we expect everyone to be like Rafa? Do we expect an automaton? Not that Rafa is that, but somebody who dedicates every living moment to competition. Carlos is not that guy. It's very clear.
The word is discipline. Right. And maybe that will come with age. Was Rafa the most disciplined at 20, 21, 22 compared to how he was at 30? I don't know.
Right. And was Novak? Probably not. He changed his diet. He changed his training. I mean, Rafa was always disciplined. And he was always kind of under the thumb of Tony Nadal, right? They're different people. They're very different. That's why the comparison doesn't really ring true for me. It's just that Carlos is the next Spanish guy to take the torch from Rafa, but they're so different in personality and game and temperament. I was thinking, as his agent was kind of complaining about Carlos's dedication and saying, I've missed Christmas, I've missed my birthday, I've missed my kids' birthdays. And the whole time I was thinking, what's your percentage?
Right.
This is your job. And it's something that you've chosen. And you chose Carlos as a kid, and Carlos has grown into someone who I imagine is very lucrative for you. So my sympathy is pretty low.
You saw a cash cow with this child. You signed on to be their agent. So just sit there and shut up. That's it. Because...
Well, collect the money.
It's an exploitative job. It's not as generous or well-intentioned as you present it. It's a nefarious business that you're in. It's not all having his best interest at heart. You have your interest as well.
Right, and maybe they care very much for Carlos on a personal level. I'm sure they do, but this is also a job, and they're making money. I think I didn't listen, but I read that the tennis podcast said there was something sinister about Carlos's coaching team, and I don't know if I would call it sinister, but I do, I get that vibe. I understand why somebody would say it. I just felt the framing, and a lot of this is down to the filmmaker's decisions, right? I found the framing was just a little bit unfair to Carlos after he had won the French Open and Wimbledon back-to-back, which both of which were a surprise during that season. The summer of 2024 was seen as this career nadir, as this absolute low, when he reached the final of the Olympics and lost to Djokovic, and then breaking his racket in Cincinnati. I just found it confusing that that was considered such a low point in his life. I mean, he had just won the Channel Slam. So few people have ever done that. It just felt like, okay, this is really not that big a deal.
Netflix has gone to Netflix.
Right.
And he has 3-4 years of play on tour. It's not like he's had 10 years. Mm-hmm. Tyra Grant, who is was a young up-and-coming Black American tennis player. I saw her partner Kovacevic in mixed doubles at the US Open last year against Lerner Tien and Clairvy Nguyenwe.
Oh, okay.
So I've seen her play tennis, and I come across this news that she's switching to play for Italy, which is timely because where are we? We are here in Rome. And she'd gotten a wild card to play in this tournament, and now she'll be playing in it as an Italian player. She was born and raised in Italy. Her father was a professional basketball player who played one season for the Charlotte Hornets, spent most of his career overseas in Europe. That's where Tyra was born, in Italy. She was raised in Italy, and her mom is an Italian model named Cinzia Giovinco. Did I say that okay?
Mm-hmm. Cinzia
Giovinco.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cinzia is like Cynthia.
She trained at the Piazzi Academy before relocating to Orlando's USTA campus in 2023. Now 17, she's won 3 junior double slam titles, as well as a couple of ITF titles in singles and doubles. It might be a good time to switch to Italy, since they currently have only one top 50 player in Jasmine Paolini, and the clock is ticking on that one.
What?
With the points coming off.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
I mean, she's still ranked 5 or 6, right?
I'm just saying, prolonged...
I thought you meant she was like too old and
No. A slump of a few months could see a real dip in that ranking.
True. And it's unusual that Italy has only one female top 50 player. They've had this, this golden age over the past 20 years. It could be really advantageous for her. Better sponsorship, better opportunities.
That's somebody to watch.
Still only 17.
It brings to mind the start of Naomi Osaka's career when she chose to represent Japan instead of the US. Venus Williams, who is now listed as an inactive tennis player on the WTA's website as well as Wikipedia.
Right, which I assume somebody probably took from the WTA.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
It means they're not retired. It means they haven't filed paperwork, but they haven't played in a tournament for, in Venus's case, over a year. Mm-hmm. I would have actually been at her final match, if that's the case, in Miami 2024.
Yeah. She has no ranking. Has Venus quietly retired?
She's about to turn 45 next month. Yeah, we're in May now, yeah. So next month she'll turn 45. She's currently serving looks at the Met Gala. And we get word that she'll be joining TNT's French Open coverage along with Sloane Stephens, who is off tour right now due to injury. Other members of that commentating staff, Andre Agassi, who, as we predicted, will not be leaving tennis at all. You'll be seeing lots of Andre. Which McEnroe do you have here? I just see McEnroe.
Oh, it's John.
Okay.
I assume, as usual, he'll take his brother along.
Lindsay Davenport, Chris Evert, Jim Courier, Caroline Wozniacki, who will be with child as she's working that commentary booth.
My first reaction was, you've got a new network covering Roland Garros. They can pick their commentary team from scratch. Did you have to pick John McEnroe? Like, you've got huge names now. You've got Andre, Venus, Sloane, Chrissy, Lindsay. Did John have to come along?
I don't think
if the quality was there.
People don't care about that. People who will watch only care about the name recognition.
I'm sorry, nobody is turning on the TV for John McEnroe commentary. I don't believe that.
I'm explaining the factors why somebody would want him on either side.
I get it, but I think those are like fantasy factors.
I'm saying, once again, that the reasons why we despise McEnroe as a commentator, those are insulated reasons to people who follow the sport religiously. That's all. Regular folk who may watch from time, they don't care. They don't care.
Fair. Fine. Sloane hasn't played since Mérida in February. She was riding a 10-match losing streak dating back to Wimbledon. She's dealt with serious injuries for a lot of her career. Is Sloane kind of testing the next step, or is she coming back for real?
No, she's done this before. When she had the serious leg injury in the summer of 2017.
Oh, when she was on the bike, remember?
In Charleston, she was doing Tennis Channel stuff.
Yeah.
This Max Purcell case just took a turn. It took one hell of a turn because this angelic person that he presented himself to be, one who was so cooperative, the most cooperative, the most embarrassed that this had happened to him against his, through no fault of his own, this ends up not being what happened.
It's so much more interesting. Max Purcell, the Australian player, major winner in doubles, he announced in December that he had accepted a provisional suspension under the anti-doping rules since he unknowingly received an IV infusion of vitamins in Bali, Indonesia, that exceeded the limit of 100 milliliters. He got 2 infusions, both which were 500 milliliters, both in excess of the limit within a 12-hour period. This is called a prohibited method under the doping rules, not a prohibited substance, but a method. So in March, he was charged with an anti-doping rule violation. Henceforth, we'll call it an ADRV. He admitted the violation and accepted the consequences. And he said back in December Quote, I volunteered this information to the ITIA and have been as transparent as possible in trying to put this whole situation behind me. I look forward to being back on the court soon. And the thing is, he wasn't lying, right? He did volunteer a lot of information, and not all of it was about himself. But at the time, this statement on Instagram seemed to imply that he might have turned himself in. You know, that he knew he violated something accidentally and he turned himself in.
Very noble.
He didn't say that outright, but I remember us and a lot of people thinking that's what happened.
Yeah. Very noble.
So, what happened is that he got these IV infusions in December 2023. During an investigation into something else, the ITIA found that Purcell had these infusions, right? And that it exceeded the 100 milliliter limit. Firstly, why should we care, right? Why should we care if people are getting vitamins and all this stuff infused into their body if they're not prohibited substances in themselves? And WADA says that the reasons we should care is that they can mask a prohibited substance, that they can be used to distort the athlete biological passport, and that these infusions can enhance performance by increasing the plasma volume in the blood. So this is all written out very clearly in the WADA anti-doping code, and that's the code that tennis follows. You can get intravenous drips if they're part of a hospital treatment, a surgery, or a clinical diagnostic investigation, or if the player has a therapeutic use exemption. Max did not.
Okay, so the interesting part of all this is the WhatsApp investigation.
Yeah.
This is just so good. Purcell and player 2, they were texting, they were messaging each other back and forth on WhatsApp, and that person is believed to be Thomas Fancutt. In these WhatsApp messages, Purcell asked the clinic not to keep receipts of his infusion. Purcell discussed how he could justify receiving the infusions. He also researched whether the infusion was prohibited under WADA code, whether it was the ingredients themselves or just the volume of the infusion. This is bad.
It paints a really different picture than what we heard in December. Right?
You know, it's one of the most predictable parts about all this. Guess who is one of his big defenders?
This is so beautiful because of the blatant hypocrisy.
So typical that Nick Kyrgios would be out here talking about how this is a witch hunt. Mm-hmm. Whereas the others, I mean, you're clearly not reading anything. You're not reading anything. You don't have any understanding of how these things work. It's just based on who you like and don't like.
Totally. Because when it came to Jannik, he was the most draconian of the doping police. But with Purcell, it's clearly it was an accident. Forget everything you read. The reason people think Thomas Fancutt is player 2 is because he was provisionally suspended on March 19th of this year for a similar charge, receiving a vitamin infusion over the limit. It was a 500 milliliter infusion, just like Max. And Fancutt said this was actually in late 2024, not 2023 like it was with Purcell. Purcell was really cooperative, right? He allowed the ITIA to access his phone data. They downloaded these WhatsApp things because initially it was part of a different investigation. We don't know for sure which investigation that was.
Oh.
You can fill it in.
Oh. I mean, is it another possible anti-doping violation or something else?
Well, I don't know if it was like the player 2 investigation or if it was something else, but they sort of stumbled upon Max's prohibited method violation. In his written statement, Purcell said, quote, I was utterly shocked when the clinic sent me back records to indicate that the infusions were actually 500 milliliters and over the allowable limit. And to me, this is just editorializing, but to me this rings false. Because, firstly, according to the text messages, he had asked that the records be destroyed. And secondly, he didn't seem to know initially what the allowable limits were when he got the infusions, because he was researching the ITIA rules on those. Now, that in and of itself is not an issue, right? Looking up the limits, that doesn't mean you're guilty. But, you know, kind of as the sum of its parts, it doesn't look great.
He says that he likes to keep his treatments confidential. That's one of the ways he addressed the ITIA's concerns.
Mm-hmm.
He raised potential justifications for the infusions in case the clinic didn't deem that his symptoms were severe enough.
Yeah, which to me, that's a side eye.
He retrospectively checked if the infusion was permitted. That alone isn't problematic, but it's the sum of the parts, like you said before. And again, this is totally out of step with how Purcell characterized the situation when the story first broke. Quickly, can you go over how the sentence is administered?
Why quickly? This is my favorite part of every episode, as you know. I won't go into all like the legal stuff, but when determining whether a violation happened, intent doesn't matter, right? This is a strict liability offense. Doesn't matter if it was by accident. That's in determining, did you commit a violation? So we've established that he committed a violation. But when determining what the consequences are, that's where the board can think about intent. A prohibited method, according to the ITIA, is not less important or less dangerous than other doping methods. But the big caveat here is that it's more likely to have been consumed by an athlete for a purpose other than performance enhancement. So the panel has to be comfortably satisfied, which is a burden that's greater than balance of probabilities, but less than beyond a reasonable doubt. They have to be comfortably satisfied that the player intentionally committed the anti-doping rule violation. And you might remember, in the Sinner case, like, what does intent mean in this case? This is not a criminal court. Intent means that the player must have known that the conduct involved significant risk, and that they must have manifestly disregarded that risk. In this case, the ITIA didn't think that they could rise to that level, that burden of proof. They didn't think they could prove or be comfortably satisfied that, he did both of those things. And some of the reasons are that Purcell took great care in his approach to anti-doping outside of this, that the ITIA wasn't able to contact the doctor who administered this, and et cetera, et cetera. So they admit that there was a degree of recklessness or intentionality, but they probably couldn't prove it. So where we are is that Purcell receives a 2-year period of ineligibility, with 6 months of it suspended as a result of substantial assistance provided by the player. Wow, that is interesting. What is substantial assistance?
By his own admission, Purcell never sought to verify whether his request of 100 milliliters had been understood, nor did he even look at the IV bag. Therefore, this will not reduce his ineligibility period.
So they've ruled that he bears a significant degree of fault or negligence. The substantial assistance thing is so interesting here because it can reduce your sentence up to 75%. So they could have dropped down all the way to 6 months. And what it means is that he snitched. It's literally what it means. He provided assistance in their investigation of another case.
Do we know that for sure, or are you just speculating?
No, we know that for sure. We don't know the details of the other case, but we know that he provided information on redacted. And the paragraph was literally blacked out in the decision.
Okay.
So, pretty interesting. So he was right back in December that he cooperated fully, that he volunteered information. He was correct. At the time, it felt like he had come forward of his own volition. He didn't say it, but as Kenny Burris said, but you implied it.
I wonder what, and this may be the first time I've ever wondered what Nick Hughes thinks about anything, and I really only say it facetiously. I wonder what he thinks about the snitching.
Does he think about it? The thing is, tennis is a cold, cold sport, and people are playing for themselves and for their livelihoods, right? So this code of silence doesn't really exist.
His results are disqualified from the date of the violation to the date of his first negative doping control sample, which was December 16th, 2023 to February 3rd, 2024. This brings to the end yet another doping saga in tennis, and indeed the end of this episode.
I'm excited to report that I am now on the email list. I'm finally getting these press releases. I know anybody could be on it. It's not special, but I'm just excited it's coming to the inbox.
Is that why I've been getting these emails?
Yes.
All of a sudden, this man kept sending emails, and like, why is this happening? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, he must have signed up for
It's
something.
like, you're not Nicole from Game Time.
Who is the hardest working woman in the internet?
Hardest working bot? I don't know, but she is consistent.
My name is Jonathan. You can find me on Blue Sky at Tennis John.
I'm James. I'm at ElliotJMR on Blue Sky.
2 L's, 2 T's. Everything BodyServe related can be found on linktree.com/thebodyserve. Thanks for listening.
Till next time.
Thank you very much.